Hello and welcome. In today's video we're going to be doing a very quick butterfly using some acrylic ink and some Brusho along with some salt. The reason for this was I wanted to use materials that were slightly unpredictable. A lot of people want to know how to become looser with their artworks and how to be a little bit more free and not so tight with the drawing. And one way of achieving that is to use materials that are unpredictable and that are difficult to control, because then we have to deal with having little accidents and letting things go and letting things just do their own thing and not being too tight and worrying too much about it. So one thing that you can do is to use the pipette to draw with, and this is something I do quite often. So this is a Daler Rowney acrylic ink. The great thing about acrylic inks is that they're permanent and they're light fast, and as soon as they're dry you can just go over them with your paints and you're not going to disturb the drawing that you've got there. There are a few drawbacks. Obviously you can't control very easily the flow of the ink using the dropper, but that's what makes it unpredictable, and that's what gives you a lot of variety in your lines, which makes very interesting drawing. So if you do get big splodges of ink, one thing that you can do is suck them back up with the dropper, or you can use the corner of a tissue to suck them up. Now if you leave them quite thick, if you leave those drops on there to dry, what you'll find will happen is sometimes you get little cracks in them, but also they will catch the light and they'll be a bit shinier than the rest of the drawing. So it's always a good idea, if you can, to suck up where you've got any excess ink in big splodges, because otherwise you get that little shine, which is quite difficult to photograph your work if you end up with that. You might like it, you might want to leave it like that and have that raised texture. That's entirely up to you, but I tend to just suck that up using a tissue. So then I applied some Brusho, again a very unpredictable media that you're going to get very different effects with that you can't really control. So I put lots of water, you'll see, on the paper first and then just sprinkled it on. And you will notice that I did have a bit of a disaster and dropped a pot over of the turquoise, which is one of my favourite colours, but you really don't want to be spilling Brusho. It's not great to get rid of. So I now look a bit like a smurf. So do make sure if you do spill Brusho anywhere where you're working that you completely clean it up. Because if you don't, in a week's time you might come to do a drawing or a watercolour or something else, and one little tiny bit of Brusho will then affect your work. You can end up with it smudging it and that colour being on there. So just be very, very careful about cleaning and tidying after you've used your Brusho. But I didn't waste it. You'll see I tipped that onto another piece of paper and put some water on there, and I've left that to dry, and I'll be able to use that another time as a background or for a card. For anything. I could use it in collage, so don't waste it. If you do spill some, you can pop it on another piece of paper and keep it for later. So I only use 3 colours in Brusho. I'm trying to think which ones I use: the turquoise, the moss green and the lemon. The greens vary a lot. The reason I use the moss was because it splits nicely. You'll see there's some purples and things come out of that, and it sort of gives us a bit of a background as if there's a garden there. So one tip with Brusho really is to not use too many colours all mixed together. 2 or 3 is enough, because you're going to get the colours coming out of them and the way that they split and the colours come out. You don't need to be therefore using lots and lots of different colours, because you'll end up with a muddy mess, and be quite sparing in how you put it on. You'll then notice that I did use the brush just to sort of move things around a little bit, just to guide the paint, but don't overdo that, just to get a tiny bit of form but still trying to keep it quite loose. Now the thing with Brushos is they can look lovely when they're still wet, and as they dry and sink into the paper you can come back to them a few hours later and think, well, this isn't as vibrant, or it's not as light as I wanted it to be. And I just felt I'd been a little bit heavy-handed with the Brusho, so you'll notice at the end I put lots of salt on, and that will suck up some of the pigment, and you need to completely leave that to dry. And when it's totally dry, take it outside or over a bin or something and sweep off that salt, and you'll see that that sucks some of that pigment up, and you'll be left with much lighter areas because obviously a butterfly is a very light thing, and in the garden you're going to have light bouncing around, so you don't want it looking too heavy. So that's another little tip. You can use salt with Brusho, and I tend to use quite a thick, a large salt. You can use rock salt or sea salt. The fine table salt sort of disappears if your paper's too wet. So, you know, perhaps leave it to dry a little touch so it's just damp, and then put your salt on, not into pools of water. And if you can, leave it overnight, because if it really needs to be completely dry before you start trying to move any of that. And of course, if you want to, you can come back and do extra drawing and extra painting on top. You can reactivate the Brusho with some water, so if there's little places that you want to get your brush and do a bit more painting and drawing, you can do. But I just wanted to give you some ideas of ways to loosen up your drawing. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I wasn't happy with how symmetrical the butterfly was and things like that. And I didn't do a pencil drawing to begin with. I just went in with this acrylic ink and had a little bit of fun putting that image down and then popping the Brusho over the top. So do make sure your ink is completely dry before you put that Brusho over the top. So I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. I'll pop some music on to what I'm doing. I do apologise, I've not been on YouTube for a while. I've had a month or so off. It's the first time I've had time off since I started YouTube. And with the way things are at the moment, I just felt I needed a little bit of a break from YouTube. It's quite a commitment doing them every week, doing videos every week. And it was nice to have some time off with family over the summer. So I will be back now, but I'm not going to commit myself to every Thursday. I'll just be putting videos out as and when I have the time to do them. I'm slightly changing my priorities. I think this is something that's come about with the situation that we're in at the moment. A lot of people are feeling the same way. We've all really had our minds focused this summer, over the last few months, on what's important to us. And for me personally, I feel the time at the moment, it's important for me to concentrate really on my own work and to be doing more of my own work. But I will still be putting YouTube videos out because I really enjoy doing them, and I certainly enjoy teaching beginners. So I'll be back on Skillshare as well very shortly with some more Skillshare videos where I go a lot more in depth with the drawing and painting process. If you want to look at some of my previous Skillshare courses, I will put the link down below for you to have a look at those as well. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or comments on this video and on the drawing and painting of this butterfly, please do get in touch in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another tutorial or demonstration. Bye for now.
Think the world of you, but somewhere down the line we changed and we grew and we fell out of touch as time goes by. Still I'm holding on to you. I know that it's time for me to let you go. I know that it's time for us to part, though it breaks my heart. Baby, it's time for me to face the truth and say it out loud. I don't know you anymore. I don't know you anymore, like I used to do before. To be inseparable, I used to stand by you. Now I'm only holding on to a bittersweet memory of you. Oh, I wish it wasn't true. I know that it's time for me to let you go. I know that it's time for us to part, though it breaks my heart. It's time for me to face the truth and say it out loud. I don't know you anymore. used to think the world of you. Somewhere down the line,